Hey guys, welcome back. So in today's video, we have got to do some preemptive winter camellia care. It's kind of tricky because I have fall blooming camellias, I have winter blooming camellias, and I have spring blooming, like really early spring blooming camellias. So even though it's not the right time to fertilize, I'm going to fertilize just a wee bit. I've been watering these camellias every day for the last 3, maybe 4 days, thoroughly drenching them because we're going to try to get them ready to go into winter. They are prone to dry soil being an issue. They have very shallow roots, so I need to protect them because they're in containers. I forgot to add that. And yes, they are in containers for the most part. I left 3 in the ground. About 3 years ago, I started digging up my camellias and putting them in containers, and any that I received as gifts since then have went straight into a container because about 3 years ago we made the decision we want to move. We just haven't moved yet, but they're waiting, and I have to keep them alive through winter, which can be tricky because most camellias are around a zone 7. There are some that go down to 6B. There may even be a 6, zone 6, but for the most part they don't want to get too cold in winter. Let's go have a closer look. The number one tip for camellias in containers, if you live somewhere that possibly will get below freezing, I'm going to tell you what it is. Do not move your pots or rotate them before winter. You can do it late spring, early summer if you want to relocate. Don't do it as you're going into winter because most of my camellias, I know from past experience trying to move them, they have actually broken through the holes in the bottom of the containers, and there are roots in the soil. And if I rotate it, if I move it, I'm going to destroy that connection, which could be very important this winter as far as hydration and nutrition for my plants. Since they are in containers, they have limited resources. So the rule of thumb with container perennial plants is if you're going to have it in a container, you have to take 2 zones away from the growing zone. For example, this camellia here is a zone 7. I'm a zone 7B/8 sometimes. So we're going to consider him a zone 5. And he's probably going to make it and do fine. But we've had a few winters where I've had a few of these container camellias suffer. And for example, this one here, it's called Japanese Fantasy. He is still trying to recover from last winter. We had so much snow last winter. Well, like 3 times. That's rare. And it was cold a couple times, like really cold, like 6, 7, 8 degrees. This guy ideally should be in the ground. He was not happy. He's trying to recover. He's not going to have many blooms this year at all. Poor thing. But the point is, you got to keep that in mind if you're going to keep a plant in a container. You got to look at your growing zone versus the plant's growing zone and try to match that up to where you're taking away 2 whole zones from that plant if you're putting it into a container, because there's no insulation from the ground. It's getting hit directly at the soil, the root ball, with all that cold air. Whereas if the plant was in the ground, like this Astilbe here is buried in a pot in the ground, he's getting all of the protection of the ground against that harsh winter weather. Astilbe actually does not need to be in the ground here in my location. I can and I do put it in containers, but the squirrels love to dig it up. So I did decide to put this one little chunk into a container. Now, another example is this fern right here. It's a zone 7, and he will not survive above ground or in a container. I know because I tried. I'm thoroughly soaking. Again, this is day, I think 5-ish, maybe 6. I did skip yesterday, so I think day 6 with a day skipped here and there. I've got some undyed mulch. We're going to use that as the top layer. Middle layer will be some potting mix, and then I've got some camellia fertilizer. It's just Hollytone from Spoma. It's right over here. Keeping it away from the dog because it must smell really good to him for some reason, right, Tonto? trees are really, really starting to look beautiful. They're also starting to fall, which that's a big job to clean up. I do leave my leaves in the beds, but I do try to keep the walkable areas clear. So I'm just gonna put a small tiny scoop in about two to three different spots down under the soil level, because I don't want Tonto to try to dig this up. And then I will put on my layer potty mix, then my layer of mulch. Since we've had an incredibly dry spell recently, I wanted to make sure my plants were really well watered before I start adding in these layers. You can see the fertilizer there. It's not much, 2 tiny holes, maybe a tablespoon each. And the reason I'm doing it now is because I failed to fertilize my camellias all year and I feel kind of bad. So I thought just a little bit might be okay. Over time, your soil levels will compact and compress, and mine had a lot in the camellias. So I did add that potty mix and then a nice thin even layer of. So this one is done. Mulch. This is our first one completed. No, 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 no. So this one's done. Just imagine a bunch of corbels around the base as a living mulch. That is my plan for all of the containers. I'm waiting for Lowe's to have their half off price sell. No, they have a bunch of the heuchera that I really want this year, but I don't want to pay full price. So I'm hoping 50% off or 75% off. We can stick a few of these guys, like 3, around the perimeter of this pot. The ones back there I got last fall, 75% off. Great deal. They're so pretty. They look gorgeous. They fill in kind of that gap down at the bottom where you just see the bare stem. So why am I doing this? Refilling the soil, mulching. It's because camellias are very, very shallow rooted. Here's an example. This guy's roots are really too high up. I may actually have to dig him up slightly and bury him deeper, but I probably won't because it's so late in the season. So I will just try to insulate those roots with the potty mix, with the mulch, and maybe leaves. If I don't plant anything in that pot, plant-wise, I will use leaves to mulch him as well. And so that takes us to the dead of winter. The amount of snow we got this past January, February was a rare treat. Tonto absolutely loved it. Probably not so much my garden and the camellias, but snow is actually an insulator. Ice and very, very low temperatures are a different story. So you can see we got some really cold temperatures. Did have to bring out my camellia covers for a short time, just a few days, and then I uncovered them. So I have these 4 done, the 2 bigger size and the 2 little size in the front. All 3 layers, little fertilizer, potty mix, mulch. The final step will be a bunch of crushed up leaves for winter protection, but there's a problem with some of my pots. They're very uneven, so when I water them, as you can see in this one right here, the water is just pooling off the side, and I need to make sure every one of these pots are level before we go into winter, because any moisture from rain, snow needs to stay in that pot. You don't want to let your camellias dry out. That's very, very important. But you don't want them soaking wet either. But you don't want to let them get dry. Those roots, the sensitive roots, get too dry. So that is one thing I will work on over the next week. I'm so glad that I took the time with this guy. This is Yuletide. It is going to pop with so many beautiful blooms, as you can see, very soon. Look at that. Got this guy on clearance just 1 year ago, Home Depot, 15 bucks. Wonderful purchase. You can see I've got a living mulch with some that's woodland phlox. Beautiful plant. It grows great in the shade. Great companion with our camellias. So I'm realizing I only have about a quarter bag of the potty mix left. I'm actually going to have to go get more because I've got 9 more containers to go. And look at this gorgeous one. I am in love. I mean, look at that. It is just gorgeous. Let's talk about well draining soil for a second. These cuttings you see in this container actually came from the in-ground camellias I have along the fence. I needed to trim them so the dog could run through here. And this is my lazy way of rooting cuttings. May or may not work, but I want to show you this container as an example of real well-draining soil. So I water. I'm going to turn off the water and watch how quickly the water moves down and through the soil and out of the container. So this is a perfect example of well-draining soil, and this is the type of soil you want for your camellias because the roots are sensitive to root rot if they are just to sit in stagnant water or non-well-draining. And I'm going to do my best to find the names of every single plant because some of these guys I have no clue. I really don't. But I would like to be able to tell you the names of all the camellias. Some I do know, like I know this is Lady Laura because it used to live out front until the deer ate it. Every single leaf, munching on the branches. I had to relocate it. It has just now recovered and grew back all of its leaves. And that's another thing about camellias. They are super slow growing. I've had them for about 5 years total. Some are new though. Like this is a new addition that's only a year old. The Yuletide is about a year old, but some are much older, like this guy here in the center. And it's very big. It used to be in the ground. And then when we decided 3 years ago, because of our HOA rules, that we wanted to move, I made the process of potting some of these camellias up. You can pot them up after they've been in the ground. When they're younger, it's easier. Obviously, if you've got a huge, 5, 6, 8 foot shrub, it may not work so well. Even though I said do not move your camellias this time of year, if you are in a much colder zone and you're trying to keep a camellia alive in a container, you may actually have to move it somewhere to get a break from the cold wind, up against a house where it's going to be warmer. I would definitely caution against bringing your camellia indoors. They are meant to have a cool, moist-ish environment, and indoors is too harsh. Y'all, I almost missed the plant sale at Lowe's. I got this gorgeous corbel that I really wanted, and then only 2 of this variety. I think it's called Peach Berry Tea or something. Really pretty color. Half price, not 75% off, but there was hardly anything left. Things have really changed over the years. 5 years ago, you could get so many plants half price, and that's how most of my front, side, and backyard have been furnished, is with clearance plants. I'm going to plant one of the corbels whole. The other I'm going to divide a little bit so I can spread out the plant because one seemed more readily usable for propagating into division. So you can see first we have to take care of the shallow roots before we can plant the heuchera or corbels. This one here, this camellia, has actually lost quite a bit of the soil in the container. You can see all of the roots, the shallow roots being exposed there. So we're going to cover those up with our potting mix and our mulch, but we're not going to go past the line on the trunk there. We do not want to cause any trunk root rot or anything like that. We want the roots near the top. Remember, these are shallow roots. They do need to breathe a little bit, so we don't want to completely smother them, but we do want to protect them over winter. This one I've already completed, just to kind of show you. I'm pressing down, making sure that I'm not burying any of the trunk below the mulch level, and I think it looks pretty good for this one. And here we go. Here's the after. I completed this one that had so much soil missing from the container. I'm checking, I'm pressing down, making sure we're not going past the line on the trunk so that it's nice and healthy and no trunk rot. I think it looks great. I divided some carex as well and put into that container. It was a pretty nice weekend, so Tonto and I took it upon ourselves to weed this entire bed. I would move the leaves, weed, put the leaves back in a nice even layer. Did find some issues on one camellia. This is one that's in the ground that doesn't get as much sun as the other 2 to its left. I did spray it 3 different times with, really pelting water. I may have to use some treatments for camellia for that poor plant. And so I'm just kind of giving you an overview here of kind of where we're starting at the beginning of the weekend. It was a lot of weed pulling. My back was really killing me because I'm not joking. I did this entire bed, bottom to top, left to right. I finally got that deck box moved back behind, between those two trees. I've been meaning to do that for maybe 2 years. There's lots of camellias that are starting to open. This one here in the front, I think that's winter something. I'm going to have to do a totally different tour, guys, with all of the names of all my camellias. But this was a very productive weekend, and this video is not concluding. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what happened. I got every one of those containers fertilized very, very lightly, got that potting mix in, got the mulch in. So now what we're gonna do when all of the trees above me in this area start to release and fall, I'm gonna line them up, make a nice strip or two, and then run my lawnmower over it. And then we're gonna use that chipped up, cut up leaf mulch. We're gonna top our camellia containers, make them nice and snug as we go into winter. So we're in fall. Hopefully now they're going to start going a little bit more dormant for the cold temperatures coming. Oh, look at those weeds. I pulled that out of one container. So many invasive weeds trying to take over there. I mean, it's really not, and it's plantain. I mean, you can use it medicinally, but not in my containers, right? I did want to show you something very interesting coming up. So one of my camellias does make seed pods, and I do have some seed pods in my fridge. But over the years, this plant here, I have 3 in the ground. I think it's either April Dawn or April Blush, has dropped some seeds. I have a 1-year-old baby, which is the one I'm showing you right here. That's a 1-year-old seedling, sapling. And then I've got a 2-year-old right there. You can see the difference. This one has a couple extra leaves. Remember, camellias are so slow growing, but look at how cute. And so next early spring, you know, I'm probably going to go ahead and pot them up because this is not where they need to live, and I want to keep them, right? I don't know where I'm going to put them yet. I'd like to have them when we move. I'm also layering on the ground a branch of that April Dawn or April Blush to propagate as well. That'll be ready early spring as well. We'll check on that, make an early spring camellia video. You can see this is still be here in this container. Did quite well. It still be goes down to like a zone 4. So obviously it fits the criteria that we talked about earlier with growing perennial things in containers. All right, so now I'm going to show you the after of working on this bed. Look, all the mulch bags are gone. I've got a nice even layer of leaves. All the weeds are gone. All the camellias are tucked in, ready to take on fall and winter. Also, one more thing. Oh, and I moved the fire pit area. I got that done this weekend too. In winter, if you're going to get super cold for any amount of time, like if I'm going to get below 10 for more than a day, 2-3 days, I will go get some bags of mulch and then surround those containers to keep the roots warm. That will be a nice extra insulation if we're getting really cold for a really long period of time. We're pretty mild. We may get cold in January, maybe February for just a little bit here and there. We're also going to have really warm days as well. So the camellias do really well here. I'm kind of like 7B/8, and most of my plants act like 8s, especially if they're in the ground. Camellias don't really follow that container perennial growing zone rule that we talked about earlier. They seem to take a little bit more cold than most plants. And I've done experiments over the years where I've tried to put zone 7 plants into a container and they die during winter. But my camellias, they tolerate the cool, and they are shade plants for me because I live in the south east of the US. So they do not take summer heat. That's why they're in the shade and low part sun, low part shade. Some need a little bit more sun than others, like that Japanese fantasy that's a higher growing zone. He really is not happy, but once I get him in the ground, I think he'll be okay. You can see the fire pit area looks much better moved. I'm really happy about all the changes I did this weekend. I'm so relieved to have my camellias finally cared for. Got the soil levels up. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon, and we'll have a tour of all the camellias.